How often do you think about the Oscars? About how many Oscar-winning films there are and how many you've seen? Yeah, there's a few famous Oscar-winning films that we've all seen. You know, The Godfather and Lord of the Rings and Titanic. I'm King of the World, all that stuff. But the Oscars have been running since 1927. There are currently over 1,000 films, feature-length films, which have won an Oscar. How many have you seen? I did the numbers for myself. It's not many, and I consider myself quite a movie buff. So here then is the premise of this podcast. Every episode, I and a rotating cast of two guests will randomly select one of the 1,000 films that have won an Oscar, watch it, and talk about it, with the only requirement being that one of the three people on each episode has to have never seen the movie before we talk about it. That will get difficult with Star Wars. Please note that our coverage of a movie does not constitute an endorsement of it. My least favorite movie of 2016, David Ayer's Suicide Squad, won an Oscar for Best Makeup, while my favorite movie of 2016, The Handmaiden, wasn't even nominated for anything. Please also note that our coverage of a movie is not a blanket endorsement of any or all of the people involved in it. A lot of terrible people have won Oscars. Kevin Spacey won an Oscar 20 years before he was outed as an abuser, and Roman Polanski won one 20 years after. But every film, good, bad, or in many cases mediocre, that has won an Oscar is an important part of film history just for being there. And they all, on some level, deserve a tiny bit of consideration, even if that consideration ends up concluding that it's garbage. And with all of that in mind, I'm your host, as always, Ellie McConaughey, and with me today is Jasmine Garcia.
I have the uncensored, annotated edition of this novel. Let's fucking go.
And also Callie, host of, what did you end up calling your podcast?
Postcards from Mystic Falls.
Postcards from Mystic Falls. I think we were up in the air on that for a while.
Yeah, we were. Hi, I'm Callie, and whoo boy, do I got some thoughts.
And we are here today to talk about the 1945 film, The Picture of Dorian Grey, which won Best Cinematography Black and White at the 18th Academy Awards,
Oh, that makes perfect sense.
as well as being nominated for Best Art Direction, Interior Decoration, Black and White, and Best Actress in a Supporting Role for Angela Lansbury. Just a quick warning to everyone, both here in the podcast and in the comments. I will at some point slip up and call it The Portrait of Dorian Gray. I don't know why. I can't stop doing it. You're just going to have to live with that.
Because it feels like it should be.
Right?
I understand that, even though, as you could probably guess from my intro, this is one of my favorite novels of all time. But if anybody ever calls it The Portrait of Dorian Gray, I can't say I will be blaming them while I am actually them.
It's so funny to me because and I thought this when I read the book, and now this I am one of the people fulfilling first timer requirements this time around. And I thought this both reading the book and watching this movie, they don't call it a picture in the story; they call it a portrait.
They sure do.
It is both.
That I don't know what was going on there, although it does make for easy adaptation if you're going to modernize it, which they have a few times.
I know that I've seen. I don't know if I've seen any other direct adaptations. I know this is me giving away so much about me. So a wee bab Ellie once went to the movie theaters as a 13-year-old to see with her darling brother to see a movie that included Dorian Gray.
Oh.
Included. Oh, okay, I know where this is going. Hang on.
In 2003.
Oh
Yeah.
no!
Oh, the first time an adaptation of this story made me very, very angry.
What a fucking movie that is.
To be honest, 50% of my problem with that movie is its portrayal of Dorian Gray. Stuart Townsend, stop ruining our Byronic heroes.
It is certainly a movie.
It's got a lot of problems as a movie. I have big.
Oh, there's lots of problems. That was just what got my goat.
It is a movie that I have not seen, and I'm content not to see based on this conversation.
I remember sitting there as a 13-year-old, having already read Dracula and a certain other movie, thinking Nina wasn't a vampire. If you wanted a lady
Nope.
vampire, why didn't you go with another one who I'm really attached to for reasons that aren't going to become obvious for another 2 years.
Huh, I wonder who that could be, Ellie.
Wonder who that could fucking be. We should probably talk about this movie.
Yes.
My first introduction was the Ben Barnes version.
I think it was the first adaptation I had ever seen, but I had read the novel prior.
I don't think I've actually ever. My end point there before I got off on the Leave Extraordinary Gentlemen tangent was that I don't think I've ever actually seen another direct adaptation of this movie before this. Of this story, rather.
I have I have seen the Ben Barnes one. Obviously, I've seen this one. And I recently listened to an Audible original called The Crimes of Dorian Gray. That was an interesting one. It's like,
He did many crimes.
The crimes which are all completely off screen in this version.
yeah, and that's part of the problem.
That costs money.
It's not just a money thing. It's definitely a Hays Code thing.
Well, yes, obviously.
This is like 45. This is really around the point where they were cracking down on like depictions of certain things. But
Yeah,
I really think it's like really undercutting the story that they're like, all these horrible things are said about you. You've done all these horrible things. I'm not going to say what they are, though.
In fairness, that some level of that is also in the novel, at least the one that was originally sent to the public. The uncensored version, I'll admit I have not gone through the whole thing yet, but I am positive it'll be showing a lot more of the quote-unquote horrible things Dorian did. But
that are super gay.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, this movie was a lot of tell, not show, right down to the fact there was so much narration where I don't think it was additive at all.
I called it a visual audio book last night.
I have like multiple times in my notes like, man, this is a really good scene that the narrator is just completely fucking ruining.
It's just sucking the life out of it, which should not happen because I definitely know for a fact some of that is directly from the book. How are you making the prose of one of Wilde's best works so dull in comparison to what we're looking at? Because
should not be possible.
Like, I absolutely buy this winning best cinematography. The cinematography is gorgeous. This is a beautiful looking movie.
It's so weird because like so much of the narration. I'm gonna make a comparison to a movie I really really love. So, how many of you have seen a movie called Blade Runner?
I know of it, and I also know there's also controversy surrounding the narration. I still need to watch it.
Negatory.
You should both watch it.
I've barely heard of it.
But in the theatrical cut, there is, narration over a lot of scenes that sounds like Harrison Ford is reading it at gunpoint. And like,
gunpoint.
Part of the problem with it isn't just that like Harrison Ford's narration is really bad. It's like there is a lot of really subtle acting going on in a lot of those scenes that gets completely undercut when then the narration busts in like the Kool-Aid Man to tell us, oh, and by the way, here's what he's feeling.
Yo!
Exactly. It's like the narration's telling us how to feel. Like, if I muted the movie at some points, it probably would have served a lot of these scenes a lot better. Because while I will honestly say our leading man is probably the weakest link in terms of acting, he's still doing a bang up job, like making it clear what's on his mind in those scenes, especially with the portrait.
Oh, yeah.
I really like the scene where he shows
Basil,
yes, thank you, the portrait.
Yes, that's the best scene.
That is like the best scene in the movie.
And like, there's a lot of really like the light going back and forth, and the repeated like tick of him picking up the knife and throwing into the desk. Like, it's a really good scene. But whenever the narration comes in, like, shut the fuck up, I'm into it.
Shut the fuck up and let the actors act.
And I get like, we talked about this a little bit in the Country Girl episode about how like the big changeover of like style of acting was in the 50s, with Marlon Brando with A Streetcar Named Desire and On the Waterfront. So like we were still doing very play to the cheap seats kind of acting at this point, but like the tick of him picking up the knife and throwing it into the desk, that is acting to the cheap seats, but it works.
And it's also foreshadowing.
Yeah, and it's cool.
And it just adds to the idea that no, this guy is becoming a total sociopath.
He's unhinged.
He is unhinged. He gets quite a body count by the end of the movie.
Yeah.
I love that though for him.
I was actually kind of curious, like if you're reading the uncensored version, like what precisely are his terrible crimes? Because like the way they were describing it, I figured they'd need a oh god, what is his name, Pasolini to put it on screen. That's it.
So I haven't gone quite to that
Okay.
yet, but I imagine like it's pretty much the worst kept secret in English literature that it was censored for being too gay, and even the censored version was considered too gay
Mhm.
for the Victorian audience.
Is
So
that why? What's not Basil? The other dude.
Henry,
Henry's such a little bitch.
Henry is such a little bitch.
Love Henry.
I consider this movie to be kind of something of a. I consider this story to be something of a love triangle between Dorian, Henry, and Basil. Really,
Hmm.
And Sybil's just kind of there. Hi, okay, go be gay, I guess. I'll go jump off. I'll go swallow poison, I guess.
Well, that was sort of the other thing that kind of like struck me. As I was watching it. So like it has been many years since I read this book, and I didn't have time to reread it for this episode.
Mhm.
But if I remember correctly, Sybil he falls out of love with Sybil because she like gets distracted by him during performance and gives a bad performance, and therefore he's like, "Oh, if you're not a good actress, I don't love you anymore." Bye.
yes, that's
Yeah.
exactly it. Yes,
Okay, so I'm like, why did they change that?
Because
I mean,
movie?
and also like that's the kind of thing I feel like is kind of hard to like you the way you described it. It is impossible to not describe it as something absolutely absurd and
I
ridiculous.
guess.
And we are supposed to at least take this somewhat seriously.
I mean, in fairness, this man's an idiot. We know this man's an
Yes.
idiot.
He is kind of an idiot.
Justice for Sybil Vane. Where the hell is her big retelling where she gets agency and to kick Dorian's ass? Almost every other done wrong heroine of this kind of literature has had at least one. Lucy Westenra has had at least 5.
Dorian Gray has one brain cell, and 99.9% of the time it doesn't work. It's a flickering light bulb.
So like Dorian Gray sits in this category of English lit where
Mhm.
and a lot of books from around this time period kind of sit in there where it's a really famous concept and like
Yeah.
people know the basic setup. He drinks the potion, he turns evil. Aliens from Mars show up, they die to a cold. The porter
Mhm.
ages instead of him. Like those people
Yeah.
know the concept, but I feel like most people don't actually know the plot, so I feel like Sybil isn't
Mhm.
famous in that way.
True.
No, unfortunately not. Which again just goes to show because it's funny because last year we on my podcast we covered this book called Reluctant Immortals,
Hmm.
and it stars B. Rochester. She's called B in the book, but it's Beatrice Rochester
Hmm.
and Lucy Westenra, and they basically have to fight their exes. And the way they portray Rochester had me thinking, wait, why the hell isn't this just Dorian Gray? This feels like this should be Dorian Gray, and you would have had to come up with what you came up with to make Rochester immortal. And Sam pointed out that not everybody knows Sybil Vane that well, and I'm just like, I hate that you're right. Especially since Angela Lansbury is so good in this.
She
She's
is.
so good. And she's so pretty.
She's so young. Like I haven't watched
She was
I
20.
haven't watched that much of Murder She Wrote, but like that's the image
Hmm.
people have for Angela Lansbury, and it
Yeah.
was just like it's very similar to seeing Maggie Smith young in movies. Just like
You're like, that doesn't feel right. This feels wrong.
exactly.
It feels like you've always been old, at least to people of our generation and a little bit older, a little bit younger. But
Yeah.
yeah, she was kind of a dish, as they said in Titanic.
Go look up young Christopher Lee if you ever wanna. He was very good looking, Mr. Christopher Lee.
I believe it. I believe it.
You know, Jazz and I were talking about this last night as we watched it, and like, this movie has a problem of exposition dumping, and I was like, I thought I had already seen the movie that accomplished this in the worst way possible, but congratulations, you beat it. This is bad.
Which one's that?
The Mummy 2017. Oh god, the exposition dumps.
Oh, I still need to see that again.
You'll have an opportunity soon.
I know. I'm a famous lover of what I was about to say, like, what am I doing with an Oscar podcast when I love trash this much? What the fuck am I talking about?
Oh no, I'm using one of my wishes on it.
No, I was just making a joke about how Oscar movies are quite often trash. This movie isn't trash.
Fair enough.
This movie puts too much effort in to be trash.
Yeah, but no.
I don't consider like effort to be the defining element of trash. But we'll get into that later. Go ahead, Callie.
Yeah, it's just like, oh my god, just I want to see what's happening here, and you're telling me, and I'm bored. Please, can we please make this like slightly more interesting?
Mhm.
And it sucks because pretty much every actor is really good in this.
Dory's a little bit of a charisma vacuum, same problem as Mummy, ironically, but we're doing our best here. It's not that bad. It's better.
It's not that he's bad, it's that he's a little bit outclassed, it feels like.
Yeah.
Like especially by George Sanders, Donna Reed, Angela Lansbury, like
For sure.
he's just kind of outclassed by his fellow cast members. And yes, given the fact that among Dorian Gray's strengths is supposed to be he's this gorgeous, charismatic young man, that is a bit of a problem.
It was a charisma vacuum, and I just wasn't having it.
I wouldn't say he was a vacuum.
I mean, like Kurt Hatfield, he didn't go on to be quite as like famous in the way
Mhm.
Angela Lansbury was gonna become famous, but like
Justified.
he had a reasonable career.
He wasn't bad. He wasn't bad. He was just the weakest link. There's a difference. Let's be clear.
Mhm.
There is a difference.
But that is a bit of a problem with your leading man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Especially like I feel like Dorian Gray is one of those like it's one of those like characters that's so hard to actually do well because you got to be
Mhm.
really good looking, but also kind of vapid, but also like really charismatic, and then you also got to be really tortured and unhappy in the final stretch.
And you also have to pull off the psycho moments, basically.
I know who could play him, Jazz. Tom Blythe.
Oh, absolutely.
We've seen him do similar in Ballad.
Oh, absolutely. Like, and not to mention, he would be closer to the novel than we have really ever gotten on screen, and that is kind of a problem. Like, pretty much every
We've seen him blonde. I need more blonde him.
yeah, because it does matter because the whole thing is that he is this cherubic-looking young man, like,
Just get Robert
and
Pattinson
it's
to
like,
do it.
and it's kind of a what was that?
Just get Robert Pattinson to do it.
Oh god.
That
That'd be cool. I
wouldn't be mad. I wouldn't be mad,
either.
but
no. I just think Tom would be interesting because Snow in Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is same character, different font.
very much so. Oh, he would absolutely sell his soul to stay young.
He sells his soul anyway, bestie.
My point exactly. If he knew that was an option, he'd do it.
Speaking of selling your soul, like another question I had for people who've read the book more recently than me is the cat statue invented for the movie?
No, not at all.
Okay, it is in the book.
Not at all.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not in the book at all.
Okay, that's what I was asking. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's not. No, that was something they added in because obviously
The Orient
in that era of filmmaking, yes, that in that era of filmmaking, everything from Ancient Egypt is evil.
Skipping over the Orientalism of it all, it's just one of those things that kind of like it's kind of indicative of the same mindset that has the narration in there. Like, no, we need an explanation for why the painting works. Painting works because it works. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah, it's a Faustian bargain. And also, upon this watch, it occurred to me, it's just like, Basil even said that he felt something different about this when he was painting it. I gotta double check if that does happen in the novel too, but I feel like it does, and I'm just like, did you being so gay for him allow him to make one wish on this portrait, Basil? Is that why we're in this mess?
You were so horny and in love that you allowed him to sell his soul for youth?
You couldn't have like steered his wish in a more productive direction.
I mean, yeah, but that he made the mistake of giving his one brain cell to Henry.
Truly.
Henry in this movie is such a complete shitheel.
Yes.
Like he is the one who like convinces Dorian to do like the
weird purity test.
Yeah, the like not just the bargain, but like the 4D chess move that ends with Sybil killing herself.
Yeah, the weird purity test.
It's so fucking
I don't get it. I didn't get that bit at all. I just, in the
Oh, I got it. Oh, I got it perfectly. If anything, I think that part aged a little too well.
I sort of like, are you really that jealous of him, of her, that you're trying to get them to break up? Like, what the fuck, dude?
Yeah, that's at least part of it, but also
Henry
like
wants to fuck Dorian.
I mean, that's definitely part of it, but Henry is an agent of chaos. That's literally his whole point in the thing. He just likes to start shit. And he thinks he's the smartest motherfucker in the room for not giving a shit. And that is a type of dude that very much exists, unfortunately.
Live fast, die young, bad guys do it well.
If he existed today, he would absolutely be like, if not part of Andrew Tate's fan base, absolutely Andrew Tate adjacent.
Oh, I hate it. I hate it.
Am I wrong,
right,
though?
I hate it.
Am I
I
wrong,
hate
though?
it.
Do you
I
want?
just said you're right, and I hate it.
I know.
I actually think he'd be one of those like weirdo homophobic gay guys.
¿Por qué no las dos?
You know the type.
It's a stack of pancakes.
I did note, like, it's got best cinematography, black and white. It does have like 2 color shots.
Moments.
Very striking ones.
Yeah, the first reveal of the painting, then the reveal of the painting corrupted, and they're really good moments.
They're
Like,
so good.
Very well used.
Yes. Fun fact, you can see both of those paintings in the Art Institute of Chicago, and I kind of wish that they had found a way to sneak that into that one museum scene in Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
I didn't know that.
Yep, you can see them there still, as far as I'm aware, and I would love to someday.
I feel like I went to the art museum in Chicago last October, but I didn't think to look for them.
You didn't know.
I didn't know.
You didn't know.
Now I know.
You can't look for what you don't know exists, Ellie.
But I like to just wander around museums, see what they got.
Exactly. It's a good time.
It's a very good time. But no, it's just like the movie kind of peaked and like my interest kind of waned and peaked with this movie. Like I was like, okay, we're getting back into. Oh, nope, you lost me again. Okay, we're back into it. Nope, I'm lost again.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many very good moments that add up to more than the sum of the sum of its parts add up to more than the whole, basically, with this. There's a lot of really, really good moments.
That could have been something better than what it became.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of weird because like there's a lot of there's several moments. I'm looking at my notes, and my notes taken as a whole are like several long sections of me just like noting whatever thing caught my amusement for the moment. Like the way someone pronounced secretive really tickled me at one point, so I just have that written down.
The snow in Angela Lansbury's performances tickled me. Like,
Yeah,
we're dropping confetti now.
But here's another note that I'm very fond of. Hey, Donna Reed.
Yes, Gladys. On the one hand, it kind of sucks that we always need to add a female love interest to Dorian Gray's, it feels like. But on the other hand, I kind of love Gladys.
She's added from. She's not in the book, right?
No.
Okay.
Dorian has no love interest post Sybil.
Which is for the best.
I don't know if I'd really call her a love interest. Like,
she's meant to be, though.
She's meant to be, but like the whole relationship seems way more just kind of like pathetic on both their parts than anything romantic. And I actually have a note in here someplace. Like they use the putting the necklace on her as a visual representation of like strangling her. What is it, like 50 years before Titanic here? So look for me to make this call back to Dorian Gray in 1,000 years when we cover Titanic.
Sure.
Oh,
but
I hate that fucking movie, but
she's been holding a torch for him since she was a little girl. And I hate to tap this sign again, but Gladys, he is not the love of your life. He is literally just a guy.
He is literally just a guy. Hit him with your car.
Man, that whole section, just like, that whole bit's just so uncomfortable. And I get that he's immortal, but like, this man is still 40 years old, Gladys.
Stop using logic, Ellie. God, it's a Faustian bargain.
Yeah, but that's really the whole thing. Like, one of the major points of the original novel is just this idea that, oh no, he's so beautiful, of course he can't be bad. Which is, of course, something that still kind of pervades our society, if perhaps a little more subtly these days. But, I mean, we all saw that Uglies trailer.
I haven't seen it yet because I like the book too much.
What precisely is happening there?
I like
Have
the
you-
book.
have you read the
I'm
book?
gonna let it live with me safely, okay?
Okay, that's fair.
I don't need that TV show. I'm gonna let a movie, whatever it is, this is gonna live with me safely.
I'm just gonna say,
Fair
my
enough.
only comment on that trailer is like, one, this premise plus the like divergent aesthetic real weird. It's real fucking weird, guys.
Mhm.
Uglies came before Divergent, though. I will give it that.
I've not read either of them. My point stands. Second, you're making your symbol of the beautiful surgically enhanced monsters a trans woman, huh?
Ugh.
Yep,
I hate that. That's not what it was.
That's a choice and a half.
it's Laverne Cox too.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Laverne, you deserve better than this, Laverne.
Look, we're not here to talk about that movie.
That's so fucking stupid. I'm so angry again.
Inevitably, that sweeps the Academy Awards this coming year. We'll talk about it.
No. It's gonna be like Divergent and Bob so badly they don't do the rest of them. Like it's uglies, pretties, and beautiful, or some shit like that.
Specials.
Specials, thank you.
I really liked that like era of filmmaking of like teenage movies coming to an end, and they had to pretend that like the Maze Runner's third movie was like a big epic climax instead of it limping to the finish line. Half the budget of the first one.
Allegiant. Jazz will tell you I read Allegiant. I was obsessed, and then I read Allegiant.
We are so off topic.
You know, it's funny that we're talking about these YA novels when I literally wrote down that Dorian, Henry, and Basil kind of are like the stereotypical YA love triangle in personality, at least.
Truly.
The last book I read that had a stereotypical YA love triangle, one of them turned out to not be interested in the main female lead, and also the main female lead, the lesbian. And also, the other one dies in one of the top 3 worst deaths in that book, and no one can even pretend that they care.
Damn.
Oh.
My last one was Iron Widow, and we all know how that turned out.
Go read The Locked Tomb. It very much makes fun of shit like that pretty regularly.
And the Iron Widow makes it polyamorous.
That's always very good.
Allegiant made me throw things.
We are so far off topic. We are bringing it back to Dorian Gray. Has this book ever gotten the prestige book YA, high school adaptation? Could you even do that?
No.
Surprisingly, not that I'm aware of.
It could.
I was picturing like a Beastly type thing. Does anyone besides me remember Beastly?
I do indeed remember Beastly. I really liked the book, so I was mad.
Oh, the Neil Patrick Harris bullshit there. Oh, man.
I've never read the book. I wasn't even aware there was a book until someone told me.
Yeah, no, and the book actually, made him an actual beast.
It was great.
Hot. What now? I didn't say that.
Oh, what would you say? What did you say? Sorry.
I didn't say hot. I definitely didn't say hot.
Oh, okay. Turns out there is a novel that takes place in a high school called Mirror Mirror, makes the protagonist female. After being befriended by a mysterious new student who gives her a mirror as a birthday present, Dory finds her reflection becoming more and more ugly, even as she appears lovelier, coinciding with her increasingly nasty personality.
I hate it.
I'm not gonna lie. I think that like flipping this is I'm normally all in favor of flipping genders. That's how we get gay shit out of classic novels. But also like I feel like flipping the genders on this particular book just alters the dynamic so much because like beauty is something that is so heavily rigidly enforced on women, especially in this era, that like she's so like it what's the quote from Ways of Seeing, you paint a beautiful woman because you want to look at her, and then you put a mirror in her hand so you can call it vanity.
Yep.
Like you can't that doesn't translate very well, this premise.
No.
And yet it's not even the first time I've heard of a gender flipped one. Like The Crimes of Dorian Gray is a gender flipped one, although that vastly changes what exactly the circumstances are of Dorian becoming immortal and what her quote unquote crimes actually are. She's basically a hardcore feminist possible terrorist, but
Good for her.
I love feminists.
it's actually very good. Like, it's very different, but it is very good.
I gotta stop getting crushes on female terrorists.
Absolutely you don't.
And I could do you one better. She's voiced by Laura Pulver in the audio drama.
What does that mean to me?
She was Irene Adler in Sherlock.
Oh shit!
She's so good in it. But also there was like a TV miniseries in the 80s with a very badass theme song.
I have seen approximately half an episode of Sherlock.
Fair.
I watched the first episode. I found it like This was like height of Sherlock fandom on Tumblr. I found it really fucking boring,
It is.
and then I never went back because then people started telling me, stopped telling me it was good and started telling me it was bad.
Yeah, that's fair.
It is.
That's very fair.
Fair enough.
But she was good in it.
No, like that's okay. Fair enough. I'll give her. No, I won't. I'm not gonna lie to you, Jazz. I love you too much.
That's fair. I like her.
I gotta stop with this though, Jazz. I really need to stop though.
I know.
Problem.
She's actually more sympathetic than Adelaide, if that helps. But anyway, back to Dorian.
That's surprising. Okay, back to Dorian.
No, like that's interesting to me because like I feel like a lot of classic books from this era get like 12,000 adaptations, and you're saying like this is one of what like six I can think of where he isn't part of like
One of like 6 really well-known ones, yeah.
I mean, yeah, there's always going to be like small budget horror studios are always going to be rating classic lit.
Surprisingly, not a whole lot of that either. Oh, and there also is an audio adaptation of the novel that's starred Alexander Valos that led to a whole bunch of different audio stories of basically Dorian in the modern day, I guess, seeking redemption.
Huh.
That's a choice.
Well, so like if you're a low budget horror media creator, we're gonna go with three recent low budget horror movies as our three examples of three things you got to go for. So we've got We're All Going to the World's Fair, incredible quality. Like you have no budget, but you're so skilled at what you're doing, it doesn't matter. You can get attention from that either. The People's Joker, just complete rawness. Maybe you don't know exactly what you're doing. Maybe you've got a budget of $20, but your movie is so punk rock that you can get attention that way. Or Terrifier 2, you're just so fucking gory and over the top. Like all of your money went onto the gore effects that people are just like, well, I gotta see this shit. And like, I don't think Dorian Gray really lends itself to that third approach.
No.
So, or the second approach, frankly, because if you're like the moment you are adapting a piece of classical literature, you throw out your punk rock credentials.
Yeah.
So unless you can do it really fucking well, there's no point. Like, go do Dracula. At least then you can have him bite people.
Yeah, the crazy thing is, I just looked it up. Between this one and the 2009 one that we mentioned, there was only one other adaptation, and of course it was Italian. Of course it was an Italian movie in the 70s.
Yeah, that honestly, straightforwardly, that tracks.
And apparently in 2021, there was one where they adapted him into a modern social media influencer.
Well, there's also apparently, I'm looking at like the adaptations page for it.
Same.
There's the 1970 Italian one, which made for those fuckers. Made for the this source material was made for the Giallo scene.
I could see it.
The Picture of Dorian Grey is a BBC miniseries. There's a 2004 one that looks like fucking touched like by an angel. My God.
Oh God.
Oh dear God.
It is called Pact with the Devil, so that does make a certain amount of sense.
He was in Penny Dreadful?
Yes, he was. Reeve Carney played him.
What precisely is Penny Dreadful? Don't fucking tell me about Penny Dreadful. I don't need it.
Oh dear.
Just know that Orpheus was Dorian Gray.
What?
Which is a sentence.
What?
The original Orpheus in Hadestown.
Oh, okay, now I got it. Okay, I don't fucking know. I actually haven't seen Hadestown.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
No, it's fine. We're just very badly off topic because which I think is a sign this movie is not really keeping our interests.
Yeah.
I do like I'm looking over my notes for interesting talking points. I have the "you little shits" note when they say that they
quoted Oscar Wilde.
It's like, fuck you guys. Fuck you. Don't do that.
Not even the weirdest way to connect Dorian Gray the character with his creator.
Oh boy.
The Athena Club series, which I have mentioned numerous times on my own podcast, and I promise one day we will release the episode on The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter. But in the third book, it is revealed that Oscar Wilde existed in this universe, but so does Dorian Gray.
Oh yeah.
And they were lovers.
Oh yeah. That's fucking weird.
And Dorian Gray is portrayed as a relatively good dude.
I hate that.
Yeah.
What poem did they quote there? Was that Dark Angel? No, Dark Angel was a Lionel Johnson poem, wasn't it?
Let me double check which one it was. I meant to look it up. Hang on.
I don't know, like it's interesting because part of me thinks this is like a really good adaptation, kind of.
There was a Star Trek version of Dorian Gray?
Of course, there was. They've brought.
Oh God.
We have to tell Dylan.
Go Google sometimes how often Sherlock Holmes shows up in Star Trek. Like, it's just a thing. It's a thing they do.
An ambassador uses women as receptacles for his negative emotions,
Okay.
which kills them.
That sounds more Bluebeard.
Can I make a connection between Dorian Gray? Because I know that like the people who make Warhammer are into this era of literature, like, and especially Oscar Wilde literature, because one of Oscar Wilde's exes, Lionel Johnson, wrote a poem called "The Dark Angel" about him.
Oh.
There's a chapter of Space Marines called "Dark Angels," who are led by Lion L. Johnson. Like, they're. So could I make a connection between Dorian Gray and the Dark Elves in 40K who have to like torture people to stay young? Probably.
Yeah, you can. I allow it.
I am really grasping it. My point about this not like holding our interest very much is like this is a really good adaptation of the source material, kind of buried under. Hold on, kind of buried underneath the expectations of the time period. Like you gotta give them a love interest. You gotta make sure the audience gets everything. So you gotta put in a narrator. You
gotta make it less gay.
They gotta make it less gay. The triumphant music that they play after he stabs the painting was like, this is so dissonant. What are you doing? This is not this moment at all.
I mean, the fact that he says, "Please, God forgive me" at the end.
That was wild.
Which just begs the question.
Then why'd you do it?
Yeah, what did anybody think it was a good idea to try to adapt this story in a time when they were going to be so restricted that it would lead to this? Because listen, like I remembered when I first started watching this, I was like, I wonder why this was never mentioned in The Celluloid Closet, which is one of my favorite documentaries of all time. And as I watched, I was like, oh, that's why. And the thing is, even with the constraints of this time period, it's not like it is impossible to at least allude to queerness. Again, there's a whole last documentary about it. That's how I found out about Dracula's daughter, and Dracula's daughter fucking slaps.
Dracula's daughter does fuck. From right around the same time period, we've also got Bride of Frankenstein.
Mm-hmm.
But what kind of strikes me about it is like, you could absolutely get away with alluding to it more, because Dorian's gayness is directly tied to his immorality, or at least you could write it that way.
You
like
could.
It's an extremely easy interpretation.
I think the problem is Basil is also so heavily queer coded, and like that's the whole reason he is painting this portrait in the first place, because he is in fact madly in love with Dorian, and the 2009 adaptation ran with that. And I was and whatever else you say about that movie, I am super grateful for that.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about the fact that Dorian Gray, or not Dorian Gray, wow, not the Ben Barnes version had like Colin Firth as Henry. I forgot about that.
Sure did.
Yeah,
that was wild.
Sorry.
I was looking at the director's filmography. It's directed by a guy named Albert Lewin, who you have not heard of before. I've not heard of any of his other movies. And like, he directed, what is this? Let's look at this number. It's like 6 movies between 42 and 57, and that was it. And like, just for context here, between 40 and 50, like Alfred Hitchcock directed like 8 movies. Like, people did movies really fucking fast back in those days.
That's true.
So, I don't think he was a very successful director. He is not nominated for Best Director, and this movie is not nominated for Best Picture.
No.
That's not a great side,
As much as I give the Academy shit, which I do, and I will continue to do that, I think they picked out the best parts of this movie to nominate for awards. Angela Lansbury and the
Got that one picture.
Cinematography.
Yeah, absolutely. Because again, this is a very gorgeous movie, and Angela Lansbury absolutely kills it. Like, Sybil Vane is not necessarily an easy character to make interesting, but I think she really pulled it off.
Yeah. Who did she lose to?
She lost to we're going to hit
Anne Revere.
Anne Revere for a movie called National Velvet. I've never heard of that.
That's not great.
Well, one of the things you're going to learn, like, covering the Oscars, and I've really sort of like gotten into this in my head over the last, what is this? This is our 10th episode, 11th episode.
Yeah, something like that.
Is that like there are some movies, like some Oscar-winning movies, stick around forever. Like The Godfather, everybody fucking knows The Godfather.
I've never seen it, but I have heard of it.
Exactly. but a lot of them just kind of like
Fade.
were movies of the moment. And I have heard of some of the movies nominated this year, running this year, like Three Grows in Brooklyn. I've heard of a Three Grows in Brooklyn.
Mickey Rooney and Elizabeth Taylor were in this one.
hmm Mickey Rooney, who I still mostly think of from that cameo in The Simpsons. This is also like the era where you go down to if you look at the awards on Wikipedia and you go down to the technical awards, like best scoring of a dramatic or comedy picture has like 20 nominees.
Oh
Wow.
my god. I see that. Yeah, holy shit.
Best cinematography only has 5, but like it lost out to Blood on the Sun for best art direction, interior decoration, black and white. And they're like, the other nominees have like best original song has like 15. Look at them.
That's
That is nuts.
I don't know, man. I've never have any idea why the Academy does what it does.
Nobody does.
I think best cinematography is a really good pick for it.
Yeah.
It is very well shot.
It's a beautiful looking movie.
Cinematography is by Harry Stradling. Do I know you, Harry?
Do I know you, you motherfucker?
You have been Streetcar Named Desire,
Oh.
Aunt Mame, word I'm not gonna say, My Fair Lady, Hello Dolly, Funny Girl.
Oh,
Yeah, he was a big deal back in those days.
damn. Good for him.
Yeah, he was a dude. He was a well-known guy.
Wow. Okay.
Did a lot of good work. Okay. Good to know.
Yeah, good for him.
How to Murder Your Wife, really? Wow.
Why is that funny? Funny Girl. He did Funny Girl too, and Hello Dolly.
Funny Girl. That's a great movie.
I haven't seen it. I'm gonna be great for this podcast because I haven't seen so much shit.
I'm gonna be dragging you in. Have you seen Star Wars? If I cover Star Wars, are you available?
Hang on. Which ones have I seen? All 3 of them, Jazz?
A New Hope. Did you see A New Hope yet?
Only A New Hope and Empire won Oscars.
I know for a fact you haven't seen Empire. You mentioned that.
I don't know if I've seen A New Hope though. If I have, I don't.
No, we've watched A New Hope together. We've watched A New Hope together. Though clearly you do not
Yeah.
remember.
Damn.
Okay, but I don't remember. I have like sponge memory. I don't have sponge memory. I have like Swiss cheese at best.
I mean, like, part of the point of like the randomness element and why I have 4 rolls per episode instead of just like picking whichever one I roll first is like I don't necessarily want to cover the big famous ones. I rolled The Godfather and Empire Strikes Back on one roll, and I didn't want to cover either of them. Like, what do I want? Like, people have talked about The Godfather for a combined 7,000 hours.
So much so it's referenced in another Oscar-winning film from last year.
Exactly. Like, there is a joke about people talking too much about The Godfather in a movie made for 12-year-olds from last year. Like, it is
Which movie was that?
Barbie.
Oh yeah.
Are you guys watching The Godfather?
But yeah, there's so many movies that I haven't seen. I just saw The Matrix for the first time like 2 months ago.
Oh, man, The Matrix. No, like, and part of the point there is like, I mean, part of it is just that I have sort of reached the point where oh yeah, The Godfather's good, but it's no micro budget horror film with 2 actors who are never seen on screen at the same time.
Yeah.
But also, just like, I don't know, how many times have you heard a podcast where someone's talking about the 1945 adaptation of Dorian Gray, or rather talking about it because we are really having trouble finding shit to say?
I mean, there'll be this one.
We're attempting to.
There'll be this one, and potentially my podcast and Sam's podcast someday. But yeah, you don't hear it very often, which is a shame.
Is it eligible for 6 Degrees? Sorry, go ahead.
It would not surprise me. I'm sure there's something thanks to Angela Lansbury. I don't know why, but I have a feeling she is the clincher. But yeah, it's a shame because, like I said before, this is one of my favorite novels because there's just so much you can do with this concept of this kid who was incredibly naive getting so easily corrupted. It's because it's not that hard to corrupt the kids that are sheltered, and just the obsession with how people look and of maintaining good appearances. It's just I love this story very much, not even just because of how gay it is.
That helps.
Although I will fight
It does help a lot.
I will fight Dorian Gray in a Denny's parking lot any day of the week.
And I'll fight Henry in a Denny's parking lot and then, take him out for brunch to talk evil.
Is Denny's the equivalent for like Florida, where of the place where you fight people.
That's Waffle House. That's Waffle House. You cannot
Because
conflict the two.
Yeah, but
Waffle House is for
the traditional
no.
Northeast Seaboard place to fight people in a parking lot at 2 a.m. is Dunkin' Donuts.
that doesn't surprise me.
Listen, Waffle House is where you fight people. Waffle House is where people you truly hate. Denny's is just
Denny's is for when it's 3 a.m. You just got out of rehearsal and fuck it, you need coffee and some food.
Yes.
Denny's is a performance. Denny's is a performance fight. Waffle House is let's fucking go.
Like Dorian Gray is a category of character that I've heard spoken of called the confront character. I love him dearly, but I'm gonna fight him.
Correct.
So you mentioned an adaptation where he's an influencer, I think you said a minute ago.
Yes, it came out in 2021. Alfred Enoch was apparently the Henry there. That's neat.
That is neat.
Skipping over the fact that I feel like bodies aside, most satires of the youth nowadays are incredibly shallow
Yeah.
covering of it.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the closest someone's come to an interesting observation about Dorian Gray.
Selfie did a good job.
Because like, well, okay, so like the ones that I really like are bodies, and Ingrid Goes West. But I also kind of recognize that people aren't going to like those as much as me because they're both incredibly just mean-spirited, angry movies that hold all of their characters in contempt, and that's why I love them. Looking forward to that recording tomorrow.
Jazz, which Dark Universe film was did they want the bodies director to do?
Let me double check that. We'll talk about that later.
No, I was just saying I was just trying to figure out which one it was, but
We'll talk about it
I'm
later.
not gonna tell Ellie anyway, so it just occurred to me. But
The end of my thought there was like one of my favorite videos on like influencer culture is a video Big Joel did on Logan Paul, where basically he tracked the way his mindset turned everyone in the world into cardboard, which is why it made perfect sense for him to find a dead body in a forest and like fuck around with it.
Oof.
And like, so if you can make that observation about Dorian Gray, you know, he is beautiful and eternally youthful, so everyone kind of stops being real to him in the
Yeah.
way that it can sort of happen for influencers. You know, they'll go out to the most beautiful place in the world and just use it as a backdrop for their staged TikTok dances or whatever the fuck influencers do these days. But again, I don't know if I trust a film executive working right now to make that observation.
yeah, I think this is more My Fair Lady, but Selfie with Karen. God, I can't pronounce her last name.
Gillen.
Karen Gillian, and then what's his last name? John.
John Cho.
Yeah, I want to make sure I had it right. I just didn't want to say the wrong last name. I was like, I thought that's what it was, but John Cho. That was a really good one. Like, it kind of made that same observation, but kind of flipped it on its head too. Like, they were both had something to learn from each other.
I mean, like My Fair Lady is an interesting comparison point because I have heard not My Fair Lady specifically, but The Portrait of Dorian Gray compared to Pygmalion. Like
Mhm.
in a way, Dorian Gray is almost Pygmalion from the point of view of the sculpture,
Ooh.
and in that context, painter becomes the sculptor in Pygmalion.
Oh, I like.
Okay.
I see it. I see it.
I do.
It's an interpretation that I've heard a few times. I think I made it myself once. It's kind of like it's one of those things where I feel like I'm you know I say occasionally if you boil everything down to its bones, everything looks like bones.
Well, yeah.
But there is an element, you know, if we take our in love thing, you know, with Dorian and Basil is the painter.
Yeah, Basil is the
I
painter.
don't have it in my I
Basil
have him in my notes by his last name, which
Basil Hallward. Yeah.
Howard, yeah. Like if he's creating this painting, and if we let's kick our Egyptian cat statues out because it's a shit plot point that I don't like.
Yeah, no, I don't think anyone in particular really likes it that much these days.
It's stupid. Like, it's unnecessary.
Then you can argue that the creation of Dorian Gray the immortal from Dorian Gray the person happens via this man painting him
Yeah.
with all this love and adoration. So like you know, I feel like you could make a very interesting reinterpretation of it through that and through like Dorian killing his creator, or I don't know. It's at least worth I think thinking about.
It's worth toying with. That would be a really cool idea.
Yeah. We do not trust anyone currently in executive positions to fucking do that.
I mean, that's sort of the reverse side of it. Like, I feel like queer media is simultaneously extremely good right now
Hmm.
and also extremely bad right now, depending on where you're looking.
Yeah.
Like the mainstream, like I'm not gonna lie to it. I've said this, alluded to this several times. I'm not gonna front with all of you. I really did not like Red, White, and Royal Blue at all.
Neither did I.
We actually did not like the movie very much either. We actually are pretty fond of the book, but the movie, no.
I never read the
I
book.
couldn't finish it.
I read one of the other writers' books.
Boyfriend material?
No, it was like about a girl who was like stuck on.
Oh, I have that one. I know which one. One Last Stop or something like. What's that fucking called?
Yeah, I've heard really good things about One Last Stop.
It was pretty good, but it wasn't something I really felt the need to read twice,
Hmm.
or like retain the title of apparently. But like the more independent stuff, you'll get very sick of me talking about I Saw the TV Girl and Love Lies Bleeding, but also like Stress Position or Bottoms. Like the weirder independent stuff's very good right now, but the mainstream stuff's just so bad
Hmm.
right now. And I guess mainstream queer media is always kind of compromised.
I wouldn't even necessarily say bad, but it's not trying for anything terribly authentic, and your mileage may vary on how well that ends up working for you in spite of it.
I guess my bigger point would be that like, man, I feel like mainstream media as a whole is kind of in a
Right.
it's kind of in a kind of yeah, it's kind of in a bad spot.
Hmm.
You know,
I could see that.
I don't think it's a coincidence that our last two Best Picture winners which were actually pretty good picks. Like I couldn't. We'll get to Coda one day and my hot takes about Coda, but like Oppenheimer was from a very uncompromising artist, maybe more uncompromising than he needs to be,
Yeah.
and
I saw it in 70mm IMAX for what it's worth.
I did too, and it's quite visually impressive, but also like Christopher
It's
Nolan,
very loud too.
calm your tits, my dude.
Yeah.
Be nicer to your actors. I know you admire Kubrick, but that was Kubrick's failing.
Those are some of our less the things we like Kubrick less for, Nolan.
Hmm.
Yeah, don't do that.
And the Best Picture before that is a movie that sort of like married the emotional intensity of an incredibly sincere romantic drama with the aesthetic of a shitpost.
What movie was that?
Everything
All
Everywhere
at
All
Once.
at Once.
Oh, okay. I was just making sure because I heard.
Yeah, it's entirely correct. Like, it is both patently absurd and dumb, and also really emotionally compelling.
Yeah, achingly sincere.
Yeah, it's so good.
It's almost like not ironic. We are very off topic. Can you tell, dear audience, like I really don't have anything to say about Dorian Gray?
And if it hadn't been so, like, the Hays Code really sucked the life out of this story, and that is a goddamn shame. There's so much you could do with this story. Like, hell, Dorian Gray appeared on that new Sabrina show at one point as a better adaptation than this.
And what was that Sabrina show?
Ugh.
Was it tied into Riverdale?
It was actually. She did end up
It's supposed to be.
She ended up appearing on Riverdale in the later seasons.
You know what? I'm not even gonna be mad about that. That shit owns. I think I love Riverdale. I'm never gonna watch it, but I think I love it just for being itself.
That's fair.
It's a thing that exists. They didn't apologize.
I picked this movie at least in part because like, I didn't know there was an adaptation of Dorian Gray that included Angela Lansbury, and because I keep rolling Black Orpheus, man, I really don't want to watch that movie until I've got like a Brazilian there to talk about it with me.
Fair.
Because like, man, apparently it's real racist, and
Oof.
I don't really have the energy for that right now.
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't know.
Maybe you won't roll it this time.
I roll 4. I'm sure I'll pick something interesting to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. We haven't really been. I feel like we've been talking around it. Do I have any other points I want to make before I do wrap up? I do find it extremely funny that they talk about how talented Sybil is, and she sings exactly one song.
I mean, but she sings the hell out of it.
She does sing the hell out of it. It's no beauty.
But it's only one song. I'm very talented at the one song that I sing. Don't ask
It's
questions.
no tale as old as time, but Sybil's brother, like, I really wish that they'd cut out a lot of the stuff with Gladys and brought Sybil's brother back earlier, Because when he rolls into
Oh, that would
when
be
he
awesome.
rolls into the movie, like, man, suddenly shit's actually happening.
You know, the funny thing is that was a fairly faithful adaptation of him up until his death, basically. Like he disappears for quite some time after Sybil's death, though he's vowed revenge against Dorian Gray, and then he pops
Hmm.
up all those years later. Also, I really loved that drunk guy around the time James Vane came back, who is clearly simping for Dorian and just writes on the wall what's going on with him.
That shot of him like writing it on the wall, that's a real fucking killer shot.
It's a great shot, even though once again it is kind of the movie telling us how to feel.
Yeah, that's the stabbing of the heart. Okay, we fucking get it. You have a thing you want me to feel. Symbolism.
To be fair, that's what happens in the book.
Yes.
And to be also fair, I know writers who use subtext, and they're all cowards.
Fair enough.
The last note that I really wanted to put down here is like, so like Dorian Gray doesn't really get into the classism elements inherent to it. You know, that you can only really afford to be a hedonist the way he is when you're fuck off rich.
Yep. Same thing with that's part of why Henry is full of shit.
Hmm.
Henry's a fucking idiot.
I did really like that one of the dudes that Dorian's like quail shoot or whatever accidentally kills Sybil's brother,
Yep.
and he's just like, man, now I can't shoot for the rest of the day because it looked bad.
Exactly. Like it's very like Wilde was definitely trying to like I said, that's not quite how James dies. If I remember correctly, he like dies when he chases Dorian right after he finds out the truth about him, if I remember correctly.
Hmm. Let me look if I can see. I can find out. Keep talking.
Da, 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 da. But yeah, I do think part of why it just doesn't get adapted that much is because of how controversial, like people do forget how controversial this story was even in its censored version.
No, apparently that is how he eats shit in the book. According to Wikipedia page, during a shooting party, a hunter accidentally kills James,
Never mind.
who was lurking in a thicket.
Ignore
Huh.
that. I might have. I think the 2009 ending might have overridden my memory of the novel. I should fix that.
I mean, that happens sometimes. You know, it's that's always. You know, I'm not going to talk about it here because I don't think that's what's going to happen in my head. You know, check back with me in 6 months. But like, you know, there are adaptations. Like, I can't see Aragorn as anyone other than Viggo Mortensen anymore,
That's fair.
for better or for worse. Yeah, I feel like you could do a lot more with the classism element,
Mhm.
and I mean, they just kind of don't. The movie that actually might be my final condemnatory thing, you know, because it's has to cut itself off quite so much to meet, you know, standards of the time. It's a lot of the stuff the movie brings up just kind of gets left on the table.
Yeah. I mean, in fairness, Wilde was big on just sprinkling in all the commentary that he could into the dialogue in very pithy ways, of course, as he was
Hmm.
practically the original sassy gay.
I mean, like that might be the other reason why it doesn't get adapted super often. You know, Dracula, to bring this to another book we're like talking about on your podcast a lot,
Mhm.
is is a book where a lot of shit happens.
Right.
Everything happens so much.
It happens so much all the time.
Whereas Dorian Gray is a very talky heavy book. If you unless you want to like go full on Marquis de Sade to depict his descent into debauchery,
Which you
you're
could.
kind of just left with which you could. That was the reference I was making earlier to the one Marquis de Sade
Mhm.
adaptation. Don't watch it. Don't ever. That will not be appearing on In Each Retelling. I don't think.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, like I said, the 2009 one kind of did that. Like, there's this one particular chapter in the novel that, as far as I could tell, nobody really likes, where it's just describing all the ways he is being hedonistic without, really bringing up the real way he's being hedonistic, if that makes sense. And
Hmm.
I'm just like, this is like the first time in human history, I think, where a part of the book was absolutely made to be a montage in a movie.
Truly.
I don't know.
This could have been montaged.
What about Naked Lunch?
I feel like Naked Lunch came after Dorian Gray.
I'm being a shit.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I think that might be. Unless you want to talk around the movie some more, I think that might be the end of our conversation.
I
here.
mean,
I think we've talked. I think we have beat around this bush to a 360-degree circle.
My final thought is this is such a thematically rich story that it really does deserve better than most of the adaptations it has gotten. Like it really should not be this hard, guys.
My final thoughts are this is certainly a visual audiobook.
It's a very pretty visual audiobook.
Yeah, very pretty visual audiobook. Yeah, that would be. I mean, like, I don't want to cut out. There are points where they do actually need the narration to explain what he's doing, but like, cut out 80% of that narration.
Yeah.
Just let it land.
Well, I didn't say it was all bad.
Narration is mostly bad, but like, it needs. It's not a terrible movie. I don't regret. I mean, okay, that's a bad example. I basically never regret watching a movie.
I don't regret watching it, and it's just that I remembered liking it a lot more when I was actually very excited to rewatch it, and I was like, oh, this is not as good as I remembered.
If you're like remembering it, 2 or 3 years down the line, you could just remember the handful of really good scenes it has, and like it become better in your brain.
Yeah, that's probably it.
Yeah.
Because it's not a worthless movie for sure. There's a lot of good in here.
Anyone got anything they want to plug?
I'm Callie, and I'm the host of Postcards from Mystic Falls, a podcast where residents of Mystic Falls drag newcomers into the Vampire Diaries coven. We'll be starting with the Vampire Diaries and continuing with each of the 2 spin-offs. You can find Postcards on social media at Mystic Falls Pod in the link below, and you can find me on social media in my link tree below. And remember, it's Mystic Falls. Nothing bad ever happens here, right?
And well, of course, as we keep on alluding to, I am the host of In Each Retelling, the podcast where we explore all the ways old tales are made new. There is a non-zero chance you'll be hearing me talking about this movie again on that very podcast. And you can follow me at Faye Riviera on basically all the socials.
As always, I can be found on Football and Tuxedos at tumblr.com, with dashes between all the words, and on Twitter and Blue Sky at LSR42. My Medium page is also LSR42. I post there once every 6,000 years. And you can also find at iwanttoreview.blogspot.com my blog where I reviewed every single episode of The X-Files and The Lone Gunman. It took me 7 years.
And thank you to both Jasmine and Callie for coming out. Join us again in 2 weeks when we'll be discussing a movie that is equally famous that I'm sure all of you have heard of before, a 1941 musical called Lady Be Good. Why do I do this to myself?
Who hasn't heard of that?
See you there.